Hello, everybody. I've been wanting to talk a little bit more about moving to Montana to join Rosie and how she fits into my life. And turns out that today's her birthday. And I thought, well, that might be the perfect opportunity to share some thoughts about where coming to Montana has been a major turning point in my life, so definitely a whole new chapter. So, as I've been sharing my life and stories from the basic aspect of getting out my photo album and just saying this is part of my timeline. This is where I was in Key West, I was in Colorado, and now I'm in Montana. I was originally born in Michigan, so I kind of think of myself as someone who has four home states. So this has been my most recent home state. I don't know if I'm ever going to leave Montana or not, because right now I'm trying to lay down long-term plans, and I think if it wasn't for Rosie, I wouldn't be here and making these type of plans. So I kind of feel like I should thank her for creating this opportunity. I'd never thought of moving here or any of the stuff I'm about to do. So that's why it's neat. So anyway, so since today's her birthday, she would have lived to be 84 years old, and um in September I call it her death day. That's the day she died. So it was 3 years ago, in November. I'm sorry, in September. And I was thinking of her on her death day, and I think that as she was dying, I was there with her. We'd both gone through watching Gary die. That was her boyfriend. We came here to live with Gary, and they both got cancer, and they died very quickly as soon as they were diagnosed. They were, told, hey, get ready to die. And so we had to, first of all, we went through surgery with Rosie, so Gary and I were kind of helping take care of her because she got diagnosed first and went through all the surgery back in 2022. So, and strangely, like right when we were bringing Rosie home, we were so focused on getting her well. Then Gary started acting really sick, and he already had a bunch of problems. So we thought, well, it could be one of those type of problems that he's been having, and we were really shocked and surprised to find out that he had cancer really bad, like even worse than Rosie. And that just shows you what a tough old guy he was. He was living with that type of cancer, and we could hardly tell. And as soon as they let him know he died, so he died in April of 2022, and she and I went through that with him, and she probably survived just a little bit longer because they did that surgery. But man, it was a real big surgery she had to go through. They had to cut open her torso, like right under the rib cage, and then like get up in there and where her pancreas was, and they went in there and they took a big thing of like a cancerous mass out of there and warned her that, well, we couldn't really get all of it because it's kind of spreading into your tissue and all this stuff. Like they got some lymph nodes and stuff out of there, but they couldn't really stop it. And he said, well, you might as well consider yourself terminally ill. So she lived another 6 months, probably due to her surgery. Maybe she would have been the first to go, but Gary was right there going, please don't die, because she turned into quite a good caregiver to him, and he really didn't want to lose her. So it was quite ironic that she did survive long enough to be there for him, but I was also right here in the middle of that. And so when you think about it, I came up here to get spiritual training from Rosie, and I think that is some pretty big spiritual training, is having had sit here with these guys through each of their crossing, and witnessing that firsthand, and just being there, and so when Gary died, his sister also came over to help, so she was also in the middle of that, and also a couple of people were here to witness. I was the main one, because the sister ran out the door to get on the phone, and Rosie was over here. She's kind of just trying to stay out of the sister's way. Plus, she was just in the hospital getting surgery, so she was trying to lay still, but she was paying attention to everything, and so she was, probably ultimately supporting in prayer. But I was the one that held his hand, and so when she died, I was also the one to hold her hand. I mean, I literally held their hand as they crossed over. I was there for that. So anyway, so I tried to make light of it. It's like, hey, I think these guys did a really good job of facing their death. So I think they were a good example for anyone who knew them, how to be brave when it's time to cross over, and so they crossed over bravely, and with Rosey and I, we tried to even have a sense of humor about it. So, anyways, a little bit ago here, I was thinking of her on her third year of crossing over, and tried to make some humor with her, and think of her, and I might have even connected, so I kind of believe in, being able to communicate with people who've crossed over, because I think when you're in the spirit realm, it can, time doesn't matter, some people think, you shouldn't be in communication with somebody once they died because they should have gone to heaven by now. They shouldn't be here. So it's hard to say how that works, so we'll find out later how that works. But, I just had a really positive synchronicity since we celebrated the third year of her crossing over, because I tried to call it what you call a going away party, like don't get depressed about, we all die. So she and I tried to have a lighthearted approach and make it a going away party, and celebrate crossing over, because it's really a really big step for everyone in their life. I think being born is a big step, and crossing over is also just as big a step, and you can celebrate that, because especially if it's their time. Anyways, it really sucks to lose a friend that, like, they could have lived longer if it wasn't for an unfortunate circumstance like that. But in realizing it's too late to turn back, that's when you have to just get courage together and face it, like, hey, this is what's going on next. So really hard and heavy. So of course, coming out of that, I was like scared, like, I'm stuck here with the house, I'm stuck here with all their things. I'm like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? So well, prior to her death, we had gone shopping for my next truck, and the ones I was looking at were too expensive for me at the time. And since then I haven't really stopped by that lot for a very long time, like I'd say 3 years. And strangely, is the day after I was thinking of her, crossing over 3 years ago, and my little car started breaking down. My truck was already waiting to go to the shop, and when this little car started breaking down, I said, man, it's time to go find another vehicle. And when I went to that same car lot where we shopped, I found the exact vehicle I was looking for. Like, it's something that Rosey would have known about. She knew I wanted this year and model, and even the color. I said I didn't want a plain white one. I want it to be something cool, like a pearl colored one, or just something different, and lo and behold, I barely got it by the skin of my teeth. It was really hard to get approved by most places, but the place I bought the car from, I think they really work hard to make a deal, right? So anyways, I thought that was a colorful synchronicity with remembering Rosey as she had crossed over 3 years ago. And and if you like numerology, I think 3 is a special number, so whatever. It was just, now was the time, and I feel like that was confirmation in itself that I actually found that truck, because I had plans to buy a vehicle to start my own chauffeur business. Maybe just try out Uber a little bit and see how it does, just to kind of feel out the area. Now, I've been in well, I've been a chauffeur already in the valley, so I know a little bit about what it needs and that type of thing, and that's why I bought the vehicle I did. So I felt like, on some level, Rosey was with me on that decision to find that truck and to go ahead with those plans. So that's where I'm waiting to set things up. I just want to get certain things in alignment, but now I'm kind of faced with a couple of other issues. Is so the house I'm staying in, they were sort of waiting for the right time to remodel the place. So they're probably waiting for Rosey and Gary to finish. They knew they were terminally ill, and then they come to find out that I needed a place to stay, so they had me sign a lease, and I was able to stay on. So that's what I was kind of worried about, is if I'm going to qualify or not. So by being able to stay here gave me a nice stepping stone where I could, have some place to live while I'm working and working and working. So I was working a lot, and I saved up to be able to make a down payment to buy the vehicle I have for my chauffeur business. So I like to think this is going to help me out. And so that's where I feel like, why not make a wish today on Rosey's birthday, to kind of create a vision of what we can do with this opportunity, because some of the things that she left behind have been helping me to move forward with some of these plans, as well as this opportunity to stay here by making that connection with Gary. Now, making that connection with Gary has a lot to do with some of the visionary state experiences I've had that caused me to introduce myself to Ted Paulson down in Big Fork. So I saw Ted one day and I felt like I knew him from somewhere, and because of him, we found the Gold Prospectors Club. And so by going there, we met up with Gary and his friends, and we all became a crew. So I think it's very interesting how some of the stuff that comes from my visionary state experiences have encouraged me to move to Montana and talk to certain people and do certain things. So up until this point, I was telling the stories where my visions led me was to be in Colorado and go to these concerts and meet these this particular band and this particular songwriter, and this is somebody I thought I had known in kindergarten. And so I told a lot of those stories living in Denver, but now the thing that happened here is I moved to Montana to live with somebody else who I met in those very same visions. And so she didn't show up in my visions quite as often, but she was there in the very first visions where I was introduced to the singer. So I thought I'd share a little bit of what I have on my in front of me here. I've been just waiting here to move for the last 3 years or so. And so I haven't really made myself at home, but I just have this table set up with, got my old tape collection. I happen to have some pictures here that were framed and they look nice. And just to show a couple pictures of Rosie. Of course, it's her birthday. Here's who I'm talking about. And then I'm going to make a wish after we explain who Rosie is and where she fits in with me a little bit. And so, oh my God, it's bright behind me. But if you see the curtains, I bought those when Gary was getting ready to die, and I haven't taken those down because I've been waiting to move. But see the rainbow colored thing there? That's the 7 chakras. So we really like those pretty rainbow colors. They're not gay colors, they're spiritual colors, just so you know. And that's okay, because the I hate to say it, but the colors they use for LGBT is the 6-color rainbow. But the colors you see a lot of times with spiritual is the 7-colored rainbow right there. Like we can think of the 7 chakras might correspond. So anyways, fun to share that because I also found, I was just shopping around at the pawn shop. I didn't go in to buy any sage, but I just thought these were so awesome because there we have the 6-color rainbow. I'm sorry, the 7-colored rainbow. So the 7-colored rainbow. So I don't know, I'm going to use that sage. And hey, I just happen to have a matching lighter. And so, and not to mention, hey, did you see my t-shirt? This was one of Rosie's favorite t-shirts, Montana with the rainbows. So I don't know if it's 6 or 7 colors, doesn't matter. At any rate, this is Rosie and Howard. So when I met Rosie, she was still involved with Howard, right? Back in 1996 is when I very first met her. And she was living near Denver. And then she reconnected with her ex-husband, Howard. So she probably had the longest relationship with Howard, who would have been her third husband. And this is just a small picture of her next to a small picture of Bill Lieb. And I'm going to tell you why I did that. So, and then I'm going to back out just a little bit and show you kind of the 2 sides of my display here. Because on one side, it's me and my father, and we love music, and so I've had a lot of visions about this dude named Bill Lieb. And this is just a really nice picture out of a magazine. This is the magazine when I was 18 years old. My dad handed me this magazine. I think I realized this might be my old friend. So it just turned out I had this cool little frame. I thought that looks cool, so he looks good in that frame. I found this other frame. Rosie looks really good in that frame, but what I want to point out is there's sort of a yin and yang correlation here. Where to my father's side, I think that we have a music culture that corresponds quite a bit with the Beat generation. It goes back to, I call it the Cultural Revolution, when you had the Beats and the hippies, and all this type of thing. And I feel like Rosie and Howard, they were more like hippies. Now, I'm not going to say my Shaolin school are hippies, but, something that I have in common with Rosie and Howard is that we have Buddhism in our life, that we have the Vedic teachings in our life, in our own different ways, with theirs being, he was a Zen Buddhist monk, and I was a Shaolin student here, become a Shaolin disciple, and then Rosie was more of a yogini, and she has a little martial arts. So does Howard, and so soon after Howard came to join Rosey in the Denver area, I was able to take them to meet Shaolin Master. Actually, he's the Grand Master there that I'm got my arm around. I really loved Master Tay, so I was really happy to get that picture. And I also really loved Bill Lieb, so there I am with a couple interesting people in my history. And of course, that's Master Dave and Sharon that taught at the Shaolin Center in Denver. Now, I've been with the Native Americans, and that's why I like some of the stuff you see here. Like I've got the tobacco, the sage, some sweetgrass. So I really like that stuff, and I just happened to find a really cool candle here. So I thought I'd share some of the fun goodies I have on my table. That I might want to change this up pretty soon. I've had the same stuff for quite a while, but there's one thing new I would say I've added, and that would be this here. Spirit radiates in, through, and around all life, ever expressing love, light, power, and our oneness with all. So that is very much a Rosey thing. That was something that she always had hanging on her wall when we were up in Big Fork. So anyways, and trying to get my phone here to stand up without tipping over and embarrassing me. So, still working on my coffee. It's already in the afternoon. Now, let me see what I like to do when we get into making a wish. And I don't know how much more I need to explain here. It's something where, okay, you know, I've shared a lot of stories about my timeline and my history, but I guess if you don't know me as well, and you haven't seen all my videos, Rosey was somebody who I made friends with after I moved to Denver. I moved to Denver when I was 20 in 1995, so I was living in Key West with my family. And when I moved to Denver, it was because my dad had a good friend up there, and I was moving up there to get involved with the music scene one way or the other. I really thought that was a good place to meet people who like industrial music. So I was showing you my father's side, and the guy I've seen in my visions growing up. He's very good at what he does. He really loved industrial music. He's really inspired. And so he's, you know, a lot of music, since industrial music would be more like hybridized, like it usually combines rock and roll and a lot of synthesizer, and this is somebody who I think is just really one of the best people that make music like that. And so, you know, there were a lot of good synchronicities on meeting Bill Lieb in my visions and where he comes in, because you know, I think the amazing thing about going to visionary state, whoever I'm speaking to in the visionary state seems to know me very deeply, and they can see potentialities, and so there's a lot of good reasons why this person's being represented in my visions. And so moving to Denver had a lot of opportunity for me to meet Bill Lieb, and that's where I feel like my visions really link up. But then all along I also run into Rosey there, and when I first met her I didn't know who she was yet, and so we got to know each other a little bit there. Then Howard showed up, and then they moved to the other side of Colorado. Then they moved up to Montana, and then I didn't have any way to call her. So then I kind of went through this process of wanting to, you know, I said, actually, I did set out to meet Bill Lieb. I wrote them ahead of time. Then I went to their concert and tried to figure out if, you know, maybe he remembers me from back in the day, or if there's any connection at all, because I realized I could be having visions. So this is where, you know, it was really like getting heavier. Then I went through a really interesting time trip. So that's a big story, one of my best stories I love to share. And then I really wanted to talk to Rosey, because I started realizing, oh my God, Rosey was the one that was taking care of Billy when I was in kindergarten. And so then I really wanted to get a hold of her and find out if she knew anything. And so it took me clear until 2002 to finally get a hold of her. And of course she verified that she's never been to Key West in her life, and she has absolutely no idea who this guy is. So anyways, so a lot of what happened in Denver kind of helped me to work through who he is and whether or not we're going to connect. And so far, like, we know each other by name and that type of thing. I'd say we are well acquainted, you know, and in the sense that you know, I know him through the music business, and he knows me through somebody who's been coming to his shows and contacting him through the internet to share my stories, of course. But not somebody that I could be closely involved with. Unlike Rosie, when I got to know her, we became very closely involved, just like, family members. So she adopted me, and like right off the bat, she kind of knew I was a good person to stay in touch with. And I come to find out later that, she does remember me from her past lives and through her visions and dreams. And I really wish I would have got a few more stories, but maybe it's too vague for her to remember. So in a sense, like, she kind of acted on her own intuition too, to take me under her wing, so to speak, right? And it turns out that Rosie's also um, not only an what do you call it? An aeronautic mechanic, but she also was in the process of becoming a pilot, and so very interesting. She had a bad accident, so that put her in a wheelchair, and so when I met her, she could barely walk. And when I got up here, she was able to stand up and push that wheelchair, and then after a while, I watched her get strong enough to walk up the side of a mountain, right? So I watched her heal and improve a lot. But yeah, something that kind of made her available would probably be that accident that made her available as a friend, or she'd probably be a busy beaver. Who knows if I'd ever met her. But so her story about her accident is very strange. It's not it's not a normal accident. It seemed like there were some little bit of spiritual battle happening around her when she had this fall, and made her quadriplegic. So it took her many years to be able to stand up and push her chair, let alone walk freely. So I watched her kind of as a living miracle, somebody who's recovered from a very bad experience. And so if you think you've struggled in your life and you listen to some of Rosie's stories, she's very optimistic for somebody who's been through so many painful events, right? So by, coming to Montana, I came into her care and keeping, so to speak. She's been an elder to me, and she's always given me a place to stay. So I've been kind of in a position of servitude. As long as I'm living with her, then I should, just help her on anything I can, like helping her get the groceries, helping her, take care of the area, like, whatever I can do, take out the trash, cleaning the yard, whatever, just be her helper, I've been like her personal helper. So I used to make a little joke, because also I got to where I was usually the one doing the driving, so I call there was a movie about our story, we could call it Driving Miss Rosie, right? So for that matter, Driving Miss Rosie, she let me drive her truck more and more. She had a 93 Chevy Suburban, so she let me get a lot of practice in her truck. She even let me use her truck later on to work at Jimmy John's and deliver pizza later on, and then I used that money to get my own truck. I call that my practice truck now that it's all beat up, and so I use that truck quite a bit to make money, and now I've got the new truck, and I feel like this has all been kind of Rosie guided for me to think about buying a Chevy Suburban. And now to even consider using this vehicle to start a business. So anyways, with that being said, that just a little outline on how, Rosie had a really bad accident when I met her in Denver. Funny thing is I made friends with these people when I visited Denver at a concert, and we stayed in touch. The guy was kind of almost my boyfriend, but then he ended up going with Rosie's daughter, so by doing that brought me and Rosie together. So I ended up getting a place right down the hall from these guys, so that they were a big help in that matter, right? So he had a crush on me for some reason, and I thought he was cute, but I was just like excited to have somebody I stayed friends with. I went back to Key West. I ended up gathering up all my things, and when I came back to Denver, I was still in touch with these people. So I got an apartment in Denver that was really bad, and I got out of there as fast as I could. And thankfully, these people were friends with the son of the landlord. So anyways, with all that nonsense, I ended up living up the hall. And so when he was dating Freya, they had Rosie down there, and like, so David's sister came over and said, Jody, you got to meet this lady Rosie. She's so cool, and she loves to talk about the stuff you like to talk about. And so that's what we made friends about, is psychic awareness and pot smoking. So that's how we got to be friends. Oh my goodness. I must have hit the floor or something weird, but that was kind of funny. Anyway, so yeah, we made friends because we like to talk about weird stuff. And so in a roundabout way, that's what I'm about to share here, is a little bit of my weirdness. So I don't know, I have to oh my goodness, I have to figure out how to stand up my camera so I can talk to you guys. I might have to resort to something. Oh my goodness, I was really thirsty too. Alright, I'm gonna change levels here because that wasn't working really good. And I'm also dealing with this light behind me. I don't like the way that light's coming through the window, so I apologize if you hate that too. Anyways, I wanted to celebrate Rosie's birthday a little bit by kind of sharing who she is to me and how kind of things came into alignment with us, you know, because it's just really cool how like how quickly I made that connection, like right after I moved to Denver in say like '96, and then we hung out for a while, and then she moved. I don't know, the very next year I actually helped her pack up and stuff, and then she moved off with Howard. And but when they moved up to Big Fork, somehow I lost contact with them, so it was kind of weird. Like I went through like this really heavy stuff, and I couldn't get a hold of her until afterward. But since we started talking, she invited me to come up here. In about 2005, we started talking about me coming to Montana, and it's like, I don't know if I want to go to Montana. It sounds kind of boring. I just didn't think it was a good idea at all. So we had to like, just some things had to happen for me to, I just felt kind of frustrated, and I just felt like I needed to change something in my life. And at the same time, she had lost Howard in 2008, and she really didn't want to live alone, and she kind of knew I needed some place to go, and she needed some companionship. So that kind of need for companionship, and me thinking, well, I can always go, you know, I had all my stuff in storage, so I could just go up there with a little bit of stuff, and if I don't like it, I could just go right back to Denver. Real easy, you know, so that's what I did, is I just went up there and just had this little, like, pad in her, like, spare bedroom with, like, she had all these books and boxes in there. It was like, you know, it was just something that I was doing temporarily to see if I'm going to stay or not, and, well, it turned out I liked it here, so we went down and got my stuff, and then we invited my mom to come up and stay with us for a while. So anyways, by 2010, I think we got my mom up here. And, man, so let me see. 2009 is when I arrived. And so I'm trying to think. That's like 16 years ago. So I've been in Montana for 16 years. And I would have never thought of moving here if it wasn't for Rosey Posey. Now, let me see. I like this sage. Now, if you know what sage is for, sage helps to clear out energy. So there could be some old energies. So kind of coincides, like if you know anything about Qigong, you know, like you kind of have old energy, you want to clear that out and replace it with new energy. So when you do Qigong, you might breathe in good energy and breathe out the old energy. So I don't want to say bad energy, just, you know, energy can get stagnant and get old, you know. And then so I love to smell, really. So it might have a nice psychological effect, whether there's spiritual energy or not, you know, it doesn't matter. It just, if you like this stuff, for me, it puts me in a good mood, you know. So if you understand metaphysical energy, you know, I think it's common to everybody, just like oxygen is, that there's, you know, there's like a life force energy around us. There's like not just air, there's like elasticity, a type of energy around us. Anyways, that's a big part of my relationship with Rosey, is learning about the spiritual stuff. And so, like, she didn't particularly teach me all this stuff. Like, I have my own, you know, my own set of guidance and stuff. And of course, I liked the Native American people because they believe in dreams and visions so much, like in the sense that it's a good source of information and guidance, you know. Like, so I was trying to go to Vision Quest because I thought the Indians would teach me a little bit about the visionary state and how to apply, you know, like if you're going to visionary state, you know, how do you deal with it? And so I don't know. I really thank the natives for teaching me a little bit about, I learned a lot more about kind of ceremony and how ceremony comes into our life, you know. So so when I came to Montana, I made friends with somebody that owned a Native American, I don't know, kind of a shop where you can buy all kinds of neat trinkets and stuff, and like silver jewelry with turquoise and all that, you know. And she had a friend that had a group we call Phoenix Fire, and I liked the concept so much because it's something where, like, you realize that we're in a time and a place where, like, the whole world is kind of becoming in communication, so we can't really look down on others, you know, people who come from other religions and things like this, because we all have one thing in common, really, and so it's really important to share our knowledge, no matter what belief you're from, because everybody wants the same thing. Who doesn't want the best potential reality? So we have a beautiful idea like bringing heaven to earth. So you don't just want to die and go to heaven. That's being like you're just waiting to die for the best things to happen. When you can make heaven on earth, you can actually change your reality by understanding what that means. So to bring heaven on earth, there's a lot of different things you could do. Some of it's super simple. You don't really need to get technical. You don't need any of this. This is a matter of preference. If you like symbolism, if you like setting things on fire, then have a good time with these things. These are nice. So you don't need anything, but just a simple what you call prayer or wish making. How to make a wish. So it's one thing you can make a wish and that wish can come true, right? But now you got to learn what to wish for. Now, I think a nice, simple, easy one is what do you call heaven on earth. It's really just a better reality. Like you can always make reality better, and I think we're already doing that. I think that everybody is already, choosing that, whether you know about it or not. I think everyone. And that's why, you go into buildings and the interior design is really nice. The lighting is really nice. The music is nice. The people are nice. This is all how you make heaven on earth on an everyday basis, not by, teaching people religion. So that's like something you can do. You can be part of a religious practice and, have maybe a center, like a church where people can meet and they can come and they can listen to lectures and sing songs, and you can do that. And that's one way to do it. It helps bring people together. And if everybody in that group is wishing for the same thing in a good way, then more power to you. Well, Rosey was a Christian minister, and but she didn't really, get up in front of people in church. She was more of a personal minister, somebody, if you get to know her, she just automatically ministers to people, and not so much right out of the Bible. It's more like she works on an intuitive level. So if she ministers to you, it's really more based on what you need to hear, based on the conversation that you're having directly with her. But she has a lot of higher guidance, and so the thing about Rosey, she's not just a spiritual person and all of that stuff. Like has she has a certificate. What do you call it? A certificate, saying that she's a Christian minister in the Church of Universal Life. And I think, well, that's cool. The Church of Universal Life, that sounds good to me, because I think whatever is true for us is true for anyone in the world, and true for anyone in the galaxy, and of course true for anyone in the universe. And if there's more than one universe, then there are just certain things that are always going to be true no matter where you go, and those are universal truths. And if there's any such thing as God, and of course, whether God exists or not depends on how we define it. Whether heaven exists, whether spirit, whatever is the unknown and unseen to us in that sense, whether that exists or not depends on a lot of times how you define it, and what you know about it, because that's why, it's such a difficult subject, and, why it leaves so much room for argument on what's really going on in the afterlife or in the spirit world for somebody that's a human being. It's to us the unseen. However, we get glimpses and ideas of what's going on over there, right? So that's where it kind of comes from, from people who've seen on the other side, somebody who's had a near-death experience. A lot of people bring back confirmation. So she's had, like Rosey, she's had a lot of a near-death experience, for example. I was going to talk a little about sweetgrass. Look, this is like a smiley face. I like these ones. They also smell really nice, but this should also be calling in some good energy. So we want to get out some of that old energy, bring in a new energy. And this is a very nice smell, which I love. And I thought it was cool that I found not only the rainbow one, but I found a red one, because it makes me think also the color is one of my favorite colors, Rosey's favorite color has always been purple. Mine is more of a red. I like red. And I like this psychedelic swirly doodles. So, yeah. What I wanted to talk about is that, since Rosey left me so much literature, I have yet to open. It's like Christmas waiting in that storage unit I have. There's like all these boxes of books, and it's really hard to say exactly what I've got, but I've already seen some of the literature that we had set up in the living room, so I have some of that out. So we have the Bible and Bibles from different religions and all kinds of different books on theology, and in my storage is I got tons of book on, at least a ton of books on theology, maybe a half ton, I don't know. But I think, it would be really nice to create a place here in Montana where people can come and experience some of the benefits of Montana. So I think the reason we're here is what's going on at an energetic level, that this is a good place for healing and mastery. So people that are trying to develop more psychic clarity in the long run, in a good spiritual way, because the psychic clarity you want is one where that you can speak with what we call God and be able to connect with what we call heaven. So really, that's just like if the universe works like a neural network, you want to be able to tap into that network. For those of us who are not so religious, the, some of the scientific community are starting to regard the universe as a living system that has connections where, so like, for example, like the codes to our DNA, like didn't arise out of Earth by itself. It's sort of universal codes that spread all across the universe, through every galaxy. And so every, star system that has planets around it may receive these type of codes. They're transmitted all the way through into, so like where life is able to emerge, for example, here on Earth, like we were able to experience biological life. Those codes come from like the frequencies moving through the universe. So that's where, a Christian might use the terminology God's plan. So God's plan entails having talking monkeys like you and I. So we were meant to be human, and we were meant to talk about stuff like this. And so like that's why we have science and religion and all this theology and stuff out there, because we were actually meant to do this and have these conversations. So we're here to help facilitate this. And so I feel like as long as I've been out here, I've imagined having a place where people can come and train martial arts and have the freedom, have a piece of land where you can kind of come and stay temporarily. You can visit us and go home. Maybe I can have a few people who live there with me and help keep the like as the groundkeeper, and have a place where you can come in and read these books. I want to make a library and a big room where you can read, a nice reading and meditating room, and share all the stuff that Rosey left us. So she was married to Howard Clearlite, which is an honorary name. So Rosey was also an honorary name. Like she had a different name. I believe her name was really Marilyn, and she was born and she was named Marilyn. She just never liked her name, and she felt like she was named after a movie star, and maybe she didn't feel like she was really that type of person. So later on, Howard named her Rosey for some reason. That became her name given to her by Howard. And Howard's last name, Clearlight, was an honorary name because he was a Zen Buddhist monk, and he was really into that when he was younger. And so these are the type of hippies, with the understanding. Rosey was born in 1941, and so growing up through the 40s, 50s, and into the 60s. I kind of think she was part of those type of hippies, in the West Coast, who really embraced the Vedic, so he was with the Zen Buddhists, and he was the first American white person to run a Zen Buddhist monastery at Tassajara, from what I know. And that, I believe, according to Rosey, you go there, you might even see something to commemorate him there. So being first isn't everything, but it does definitely say a lot about the type of people they were. They were the type of people you hear about, the people who were always born into Christianity here in the States, and maybe they felt like they were looking for that alternative when they were younger, and they were both in the Vedic. So that would entail also, Vedic is a big topic. It really entails more than Buddhism, so, but when you look at yoga, it goes way back, and so that was what I was going to say, Rosey's favorite thing was yoga, and Howard's favorite thing was the Zen Buddhist meditation. Now, they both had been into martial arts a little bit, so as I was mentioning here, I feel like that's something that's a commonality for us, is having a connection with Zen and Buddhism. Somebody who, so I never really got hardcore about it. It's just, I like to think of it as something I've learned from as a martial arts student. So for me, to go to martial arts helps me to be able to love and appreciate the wisdom and knowledge that comes from people from far, far away. So I think that's a good step in our evolution, in being able to learn from other people, no matter where they come from. Because who knows, the very next thing we can be talking about is people from outer space and other dimensions. Okay, so this is Rosey's other topic. So not only is she loving all of this type of earthly religion, so she's not very religious herself, but because she's clairvoyant, she can kind of see the truth in things, and she's also a contactee. She's been contacted by extraterrestrials. She's been beamed up, and so has Howard. The husband before that, actually, her husband before that, Grant. They were living in Europe for a little while, and they both witnessed some spaceships, and so together they were able to witness spaceships. I don't think they were abducted, but she did communicate, and she has a really good story about that. I'd like to share at some point. But so she's just always had, good fortune in being able to witness and come in contact, and she says a lot of that has to do with your how you are to begin with. Like if you're cool with it, like you're somebody that's not going to freak out. So that's a big part of her story, and this is where, a lot of people don't think they should believe her, right? So I'm not sure if we should really believe that stuff. It sounds pretty crazy. So I think a lot of her family, assume that, she's just done way too much acid, smoked way too much pot, or not to mention dementia runs in the family. It could, I think she may have been experiencing a little bit of dementia later in life, but I think she really stood by her stories of how she ended up in a wheelchair. It was sort of a spiritual attack, and that she's always had a relationship with these extraterrestrials. And so it's somewhat relevant bringing this up, because I don't know if it's just me, but I keep seeing a lot of stuff about this, what do we call, 3-eye atlas, right? 3-eye atlas? This thing that they're not sure if it's a comet or if it's some type of a spacecraft, and it's becoming a really popular topic of people seeing UFOs and wondering if, we're getting ready for open contact and all this stuff. And so this has been a lot of the discussion I get with Rosey is, getting us ready for more open contact, or understanding that there are extraterrestrials on different levels, and that's why you don't really see them all the time, and they come to us psychically. And so this could be a little bit about what I've been experiencing too, by going to visionary state and trying to resolve what's been happening with me. Could be a form of extraterrestrial contact. So by coming to live with Rosey, of course, my life got really different, and since I've been with her, I think I've gotten quite an education on extraterrestrial and how they contact us. So anyways, a big part of what I get out of coming here, I would call is an extra. So I wanted a spiritual education and turn more and more and more into an extraterrestrial education, and the reason for that is they're supposed to be spiritual. So for those of us who are Christian, and you believe in God and Jesus and all this stuff, so between us on earth and between the Most High, there's angels and all kinds of different beings of, they call it created beings of higher order. Along with that, there could just be different types of human beings from around the galaxy, from around the universe, that have achieved space travel or achieved higher levels of reality and stuff like that. And so it's like a lot of big questions there, so it's pretty wild stuff. But it's, being an earthling in the solid state, we kind of get the idea that there's a lot more stuff going on than we can actually see. And so Rosey's a big supporter on getting an extraterrestrial education. So if there's any such thing as extraterrestrials who are about, who have been in contact, so they say they've always been with us, and they've, come and gone. They've not always been in the open. They're already in touch with the government, So all this information out there, but I don't really, other than my personal experience going into the visionary state, I haven't really seen. I might have seen a little spacecraft one day, but again, try to be flexible on what I experience with that. Like when you see something weird, you gotta make sure it's not your imagination, and wait for the proper confirmation. So other people are seeing UFOs in the area, right? So there could be UFOs up here, and people see Sasquatches up here. Why not? So we got that too. Anyways, my wish is to really be able to find the right property eventually. So it might take some steps, to get to this property. Rosey was a real estate agent, and she's been encouraging me to be a real estate agent. And I thought, well, if I do that, that's because, I would intend to educate myself so that I can eventually make a purchase and be really knowledgeable of what I'm buying and what it's worth. Because I really do want to make a sacred place where people can come and read the books that they left us and spend some time in the area. So I'd probably live someplace where it's either you have access to the wilderness or we're close to the wilderness so you can breathe that fresh oxygen, get away from the highway. She always said you got to get away from the highway. You don't want to be in the flood zone either. Now, I also want to be careful wherever you live up here. We don't really have a problem with forest fires, but if you live in a wooded area, it's really hard to avoid taking a big loss. So, you need a piece of property where, we're not going to burn down too easy. So, I want to have a piece of property where maybe there's already some good buildings on there, so I don't really need to build anything, but if I want to, I can, and stuff like that. I really think Rosey would support me on some of this stuff, and that way it would give her an opportunity to continue being influenced by, by sharing her library and some of the stuff I've learned off of her. It's really important, like, no matter what you believe in, that, you take time to purify. So that's what some of the stuff I've learned from Native Americans, like the number one thing, like regardless of all of their theology and stuff like that, there's really some basic notes you want to take from everybody's different belief systems. And one of the best ones, I think this is true for anybody, I don't care if you're atheist or super religious, is you gotta purify. And the Indians used to say, you must purify, because you go to that sweat lodge and they purify by sweating, which you really do. So I mean, that's why you can just purify by you get exercise, and you sweat, you drink water, and you sweat. You're gonna purify. I don't care what you believe. Also, go someplace where the air is clean and there's oxygen being made. So this is why I want a good place where there's oxygen being made, and there's water you can drink if you wanted to scoop it right out of the creek. But really, maybe you want to prepare it. So I want to live someplace where you can actually get into a creek that's deep enough to maybe submerge in or swim in, and benefit from that water being there. But let's see, so like I'm kind of making a wish. I think Rosie's always known what my wish is to find the right property. So it might be a nice piece of land eventually. Right now, I might need to move into a studio space so I can get some projects started. So the very next place I might move to could be a studio. So I want to make sure that I find a place to move to before this place can give me my 30 days notice, because probably by the end of winter they're going to want to take this property back and get in here and fix the place up and triple the price of the rent. And so we're making a wish today, to not only help me get someplace good, but to help continue some of the work. I feel like I'm here to kind of continue some of the work that Rosey and Howard have been doing, and particularly in the sense of what Rosey's doing. And so coming back to the Phoenix Fire Whirling Rainbow Tribe, I made connections with those people, and the person who started it, Valdine, she moved away, and I have her on Facebook, and we haven't really talked much, but she still has groups and stuff like that. But we used to go to her groups because she was the person that organized us all the time. And now that she's been gone, we don't really have one out here. So we're kind of a loose-knit group that, no matter what you call it, I want to kind of work in that same spirit of the Phoenix Fire Whirling Rainbow Tribe, and that I have a place where we could probably have some really good times, have some small gatherings, have some people come out and give some lessons and some seminars on healing and some of the martial arts training as well. So I really would like to have the opportunity to do some martial arts training on our property and have some really good seminars out there, and have people come and stay with us and camp out, for a while, and give themselves a chance to reformat, their auras and stuff like that. And so a good center for people that are coming out for the healing who are on a path of mastery. So the people that are trying to open up to clarity. And so we come back to that honorary name, Clearlite. That's what we want, right? We want clarity, because as Rosey would say, with clarity, there is little to fear. I can't remember if she said nothing to fear, but I always say there's little to fear, because there's still things you should really be afraid of and get out of the way of, but you really shouldn't be afraid of things when it's not necessary. So that's where clarity gets rid of. It really cuts through a lot of bad boundaries and unneeded boundaries, and I say that because you also need boundaries, right? But not unreasonable boundaries. So clarity gets rid of a lot of unnecessary fear, and that also brings to you what we call spirit law. So by being able to just, trust the people around you because you have the clarity. So some people say, we really wouldn't want people to be more psychically inclined because then we'll know what everybody's thinking. And, people have too many dirty thoughts that they're ashamed of and they don't want people to hear. Well, we just might have to get used to the fact that everybody has those dirty thoughts sometimes, and with being able to have a little bit of psychic awareness to hear everybody's thoughts, then we kind of have no choice but to accept each other, no matter how dirty our thoughts are. So that type of clarity might entail, increasing your psychic awareness and your sensitivity, and all these type of things that are going to eventually help us to modify our day-to-day life and our overall reality. So, so that's really, where I feel like I'm still carrying out that type of work in my own little way, and by creating a place here in Montana where people can come to experience that type of work, where you can heal up, get more clarity, find your center. You might live in a place where it's very hectic. If you're living in a big city right now, and you're one of my friends living, even in Denver, it's a pretty nice big city, but even then, if you came out here and just went camping, you get a lot of great camping opportunities in Colorado, but to camp with me is to share with me in my space, would be a unique experience in itself, to get people to kind of like relax and reformat, and one of the things I want to do is also take my friends to the hot springs. If you come to visit me, there's hot springs all around the country, but our hot springs is also very special. It's one of the only ones that have the minerals that it does, and by going to those hot springs, you can also reformat the energy patterns around your body. And so that's what I think brought me to Montana, is to create this very opportunity to have a home base for spiritual healing, and to be able to reformat and recenter myself, of course. So I want to get that for me, and if I can, I would share it with all my best friends and the people who I love and care about. So anyways, with that being said, we're going to make a wish. I think this is what Rosey would like to see happen, is that we're going to appreciate the library she left us, and we're going to appreciate the opportunity that I have to make some money and buy some land or find the right property to continue this type of spiritual work. So anyways, happy would have been Rosey's birthday today, and I want to thank Rosey for all the help and support she brought me to continue my upbringing, since adulthood. Some people say your upbringing ends when you turn 21. Your upbringing continues if you're still evolving. And I like to think that she contributed quite a bit to the upbringing I've had up to this point. And since I've had the last 3 years to calm down and be alone, I've been able to see a lot of good things happening out of this opportunity. So before I was just like, really frustrated, but things have changed so much, and I always think, boy, I sure wish Rosey was here to see this. And in the back of my mind, I know that she is here to see this. So every single time she's like, I am here to see this. And I've had a number of dreams where I'm like, Rosey, you're alive. And she goes, yeah, of course I'm still alive. So wherever Rosey is, we still alive. We don't know how, I don't know what happened, like, did she go to heaven? Did she reincarnate? But that's the moral of the story. Some of the best spiritual training I've had was holding her and her boyfriend's hand during the time they cross over. And so that leaves me to wonder, if sometimes our friend, people close to us and our loved ones, when they cross over, sometimes they get to be your spirit guide a little bit. And so if they've been my spirit guide, then I have to say thanks, because I have a funny feeling that her and Gary Wilmess have been my spirit guide. And there's been a number of things that I'm going to share later where I feel that I feel almost not only blessed but protected because of the relationship I had with them. And since I've been able to do things to help them, and they've been able to do things to help me, my life is really different than it would be otherwise without having made that connection, without moving to Montana. So I have a whole nother chapter I hope to unveil the more I get time. So anyways, I can't wait to add to my story. I come to the point where I've moved to Montana. I've learned a lot about Rosey, but then I still have to share the things that have gone over the years since 2009. And I haven't left the valley in 10 years, but hey, you know, I've had a lot of valuable experience up here that I look forward to sharing. So anyways, again, thanks for watching. If you're still listening, woo doggy, I'm going on about an hour. So I apologize for rambling. I just don't have a way to edit and organize. I just really did all this off the top of my head and wanted to have a small ceremony to celebrate Rosey's birthday, in a sense, because this was a good opportunity to let her know what I'm looking forward to doing with all the stuff she left me. So I'm not just going to donate it and get rid of it. Rather, I want to create a library and have a good place to, so that way everything she's done for me, you know, we can, what do you call, pay it forward. So yes, that's the word. That's, see, again, I'm doing all this off the top of my head. I always like to pay it forward. So I've taken a lot of stuff already. I sold it at a good price. I've made a lot of people happy with her weaving things. I had a lot of valuable things that somebody could use, and I still have a little bit of stuff left. It's more the less valuable stuff, but I have a lot of books, and I thought, well, I don't just want to get rid of this. Let's keep these around. And most recently, it's like, bingo, let's talk about creating a nice reading center to share this library of theology books, and a place for spiritual advancement. At any rate, have a good day, and happy Thanksgiving, yay! Can't wait to have a festive day. By the way, I'm actually going to try to make Thanksgiving dinner, so I'll let you know how that works out. Until then, have a great day.